Welcome to the Wander Mode podcast, where we celebrate the fearless spirit of women embracing life's wanderings. Where every story is a spark of inspiration and reminds us that sometimes the most beautiful moments happen when we simply embrace wherever the journey may lead. Today's guest, Lindsey Heiserman, went from struggling through the mile in elementary school to finding her passion in fitness and transforming her life. Starting with homemade step aerobics and weightlifting at 14, Lindsey discovered a love for strength, physical, mental, and emotional. That changed everything. Now she's a personal trainer and a life coach, helping others make meaningful, lasting changes. When she's not coaching, she's training for obstacle races, exploring the US, and cozying up with her fur babies and a strong coffee. The question I want to start with, where are you at in this exact moment? Your headspace as an individual, as a partner, as an entrepreneur, what's top of mind for you right now?
Well, this could get dark real fast.
It's okay. We'll take the dark.
Yeah. So I actually just released my own podcast recently. My father passed away about a month ago, and I did a podcast on death and dying because it wasn't sad, which it's funny because people always say, I'm sorry. But what has been really stressful was the past 2.5 years that happened before the death. So in this exact moment, I'm working on just really reclaiming all the things. I feel like I've been under a lot of emotional stress that I've been just sort of trying to tick along through. And now I feel like the clouds are parting some in a way. Like I can focus a little better, work on my business goals that I haven't worked on for a while because I haven't had the bandwidth to do that. And just, it feels like I'm a little more on the upswing, which feels good.
I think grief can be this super, super personal journey that we don't often want to communicate to other people. So what led you wanting to put out a podcast episode about it? And what did you have to do or wrap your head around in order to be able to put that out into the world?
You know, with my work with clients that I've done for so long, I've had conversations that people don't tell other people much. And I knew that this conversation I wanted to have, I was not the only one. I was not the only one feeling relief when a parent died. I was not the only one feeling not sad. I was not the only one feeling complicated emotions about a death. I've worked with many clients through this. I've had my own death experiences in different kinds. I've worked with clients who've had a variety, some tragic deaths, some really hard ones, and just the gamut of death experiences. And I wanted to share that no matter what your experience with death was, it's okay. There are some instances where it's just horrendous and awful and tragic and devastating, and you feel like you will never recover from that. There are accidental deaths. There are illnesses that come. I mean, there's just so many ranges, and I wanted to give a little bit of a voice to people who had a complicated relationship with a parent. And as I was surprised, not surprised, I had a lot of feedback of people who were like, thank you for saying that. That's what I experienced. It is very complicated. I'm grateful you said those things because I haven't been able to say those things. And I wanted to add another voice to the conversation. And especially, I think, because everyone's automatic thing they say is, I'm sorry. And I sometimes also love to be brash and I'll say, I'm not. And then I watch for their facial expressions and I'm like, I don't mean that in a bad way, but like, this is my true feeling that sorry is not the emotion I have at the moment. And so, yeah, I had it in me for a couple of weeks, really thinking about it and what I wanted to say and how I wanted to formulate it. And I just hit record and then I didn't want to publish it. And then I just did. And I thought, don't overthink it. Just put it out there. And many times I said in the episode, this is my experience personally, professionally. Take what you need, leave what you don't, come back to it if you want to. Don't listen to it now. Like nothing I say is the correct thing. And yeah, it also helped me. I'm very much a verbal processor. I think that's why I'm good with coaching. Words and speaking helped me a lot. So being able to record that was really helpful.
If there is someone that's listening, thinking right now, yes, like how have I not heard anybody yet talk about how death doesn't always equal sadness? And they're resonating with that. We'll be sure to link to the episode in the show notes. But tell me a little bit about your podcasting journey in general, and how do you keep that authenticity and that honesty and maybe sometimes that brashness coming through the lens as a podcaster of wanting to be able to connect with your audience, but also being authentically you?
This is kind of funny to think about because I've had my business now for almost 10 years. And I think the coaching industry is wildly different than it was even 10 years ago. So is podcasting. And I remember, I think I started my podcast in maybe 2017, maybe 18. I have almost 300 episodes, I think, over that time. But I had a newsletter. I like to think that I invented email marketing. I did not. But when I was working at the club, like 15 years ago at a gym, I did mail merge, and I was like keeping in contact with all these people I had ever met and my clients, and no one else was doing this. And I was like, what are you people doing? You need to be staying in contact with all the people you've ever met. And so I had a newsletter when I started my business, and I remember thinking about podcasting, but it was one of those where I was like, I don't know how to do it. It's so complicated. And my client was like, you have way too much to say. He's like, you have way too much to say for a newsletter. So just go figure that out. And I was like, okay. So I Googled how to start a podcast. I mean, truly. And then I just did it. It turns out it wasn't that challenging. And I kept it going and authentic because I gave myself some parameters. I don't edit. I don't re-listen, and I don't really attach a lot of perfectionism to it. I did it consistently for a while, and then I needed a break. And I looked back just at what I did this year, and I was like, wow, I don't have very many episodes, but I'll pick it back up. And like, I just published 3. And so I also just decided that it would ebb and flow with me, and to let go of whatever rules I thought there were. Oh, it has to be every week, or it has to be this way, because there really aren't any rules.
It is this odd thing being on this side of the mic that I think sometimes we give ourselves these rules. We make things harder on ourselves than we actually need to. As you're saying, we think that we have to post an episode every week because that's what people tell you is the industry standard or best practice. We think that our episodes should be this long in length because blah, blah, blah. When in fact, really, when you're the one who's making up the rules of the game, you get to decide if a rule is going to change. You get to decide if a rule isn't going to apply to you this week because I'm swamped, right?
And there was a period kind of in COVID where I was considering shifting my business to a little more business coaching centric. So I was like, I'm changing my podcast and we're only telling business stories and we're focusing on business. And it was great. I loved those episodes, but that's not what I really truly wanted to do long term. And I was like, can I go back? Can I just change back? Yeah, I just did, and nothing bad happened. And, you know, my podcast, people are like, pick a niche, talk about a specific thing. And I'm like, my specific thing is talking to people and telling stories. And that is a thing. That's it. That's the thing. So does it tie specifically to my business? I don't know, not necessarily, but like also my business is life coaching and wellness, which is kind of a whole person approach anyway. So everybody's stories really fit. So let go of what rules I might have made. And that has really helped.
And you and I have that in common because our podcasts are both storytelling podcasts. And I am so glad that you said out loud, like people will say to you, pick a niche, pick a specific thing, really hone in. At the same time, though, my whole point about telling people stories is that we're always more than one thing. So if I want a very business specific podcast, I can go out there and find that. But sometimes I just want to hear, what is someone else's life like? What can I learn from somebody else about lots of different facets? Because just like we started this podcast and you're talking about dealing with some emotions around posting that episode and some of the feedback and things like that, that might be top of mind for you today. But 5 days from now, it might be solely your business and changing your marketing strategy or whatever. And I think sometimes when we can catch people in those ebbs and flows, that's where the most beautiful stories are told because we can all relate to that.
I agree.
So tell me a little bit about the coaching side of what you do, because it sounds like really a lot of what you're doing with the podcast, even just kind of breaking the rules, being honest with people, things like that, very much apply to the coach side of you. So how did you get into that space specifically?
A little bit of everything. A slight nod to my dad here, which I will always remember this, is he was big into comics and he clipped out this comic from the newspaper when I was in college. So this was early 2000s, very early 2000s. And it was about life coaching. Life coaching was not a thing in the early 2000s. It did not have a name. People were doing it, no doubt, but it was not anywhere like it is now. And he was like, this is what you should do. And I was like, Dad, that's not what I'm doing. Why are you giving me a comic? But I was already in school for exercise science, which is where I met our mutual friend, Amy. And so I knew I was going to do health and wellness. That was always a thing. I was like, I'm going to help people with their physical health. And then when I started my job as a personal trainer, it became very clear to me that exercise was the vehicle. But what really mattered was the mental, emotional changes that were going to happen because you were exercising. And I am just such a relationship builder with clients that I would honestly tell them, I'm like, I don't care if you increase your weight. I care that you come to the gym regularly. I care that you work on your behavior change. I care that you are in a better mood when you leave. Like all these things matter to me as your trainer a lot more than did you do 5 pounds more than last week, you know? And as I was working, I thought to myself, well, what's my next step? Because I don't know if I'm going to be a personal trainer forever. I don't know, probably not. And that stuff in the mental, emotional piece was so much more intriguing to me. And so at the time, again, pretty early, mid 2000s, it was therapy was sort of the next other thing. And so I was like, all right, I'll get a master's degree in psychotherapy. I'll become a therapist and we'll sort of move that way. And so I did a 4-year program, nights and weekends, like the adult that I was, just grinding it out. And I got to the end and I'm like, I don't want to be a therapist. And I'll tell you why. But there was also at the time at my school, a 6-month credential for life coaching. So it was like an add-on you could do. So I did it at the end. And I was like, why didn't I not do this at the beginning? This was it. This like 6-month program, this was it. But I like to also tell my clients, though, I'm pretty dangerous because I'm trained as a therapist, but I'm not licensed. So I can't say that I'm a therapist, but when you get coaching, we've got a lot of that in there, right? Whereas coaching is very forward focused. That's sort of the main difference between coaching and therapy is like taking you from where you are and going forward. But therapy is a lot of like what's behind you. And I like to really put them together, which is like, where are you going? But you also have to understand how you got here. So that's a short version of how I ended up incorporating life coaching into my work.
You have to explain, or at least tack on a little bit, like why not therapy?
I am a very forward-thinking person, somewhat to my detriment in the sense of I don't always stay super present in today because I'm thinking about like, what's the future? Where can we go from here? What goals should we have? Or where are we headed? And with therapy, I also didn't want to diagnose. I didn't really want to do diagnosing of mental disorders. And I didn't want to sit at the time, especially, it was like sit in a chair for 8 hours a day and listen to people and really do heavy work in that historical way of, you know, what trauma got you here and what do you need to unpack and unwind and deal with? And that just didn't feel as right to me. The best example, I have a client that I do coaching with, and his mom died tragically of a stroke when he was a teenager. And he doesn't want to talk about it. We have never talked about the day his mom died, which is fine. I don't think you need to unwind that. But I will often say in coaching, and it's all permission based too, I'll say, is it okay if I point something out? It's related to your mom's death. And he'll say yes or no. And I'll say, can you see how that event in your life impacts what you're doing right now? And here's how I think it's impacting you. Or here's how the thinking you have now might be related to that. And that has been really powerful for him. But he decided one time he wanted to try therapy. He actually like wanted to go to therapy. And he told me, he goes, I walked in, I sat down and they said, tell me about the day your mom died. And he goes, I basically got up and walked back out. And that's not every therapist, but a lot of times therapy is for taking that traumatic moment or helping you find that thing and then like digging it up. Mm-hmm. And it's not always what needs to happen. And that's for me, the best example is that you can acknowledge that something has happened and it's had a big impact on you and work on the ways going forward and in the moment that it's affecting you without unpacking it. And especially for him, it won't change it. It won't bring his mom back. It won't change that day. It won't change what happened afterwards, but you can start to understand how it's leaving its mark and intertwining you in a positive or negative way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. That actually really resonates. For me personally, I've actually been through a lot of therapy for things in my past. And it's funny that you say that because I got to a point in my journey with it where it was helpful in some aspects as far as it was going to allow me to at least navigate and start to be more forward thinking instead of always thinking about the past. But I got to that same exact stage of I'm not convinced that continuing to dig this up and dig this up and dig this up is actually helping me. That I needed to almost compartmentalize it and leave it behind and say, this is what it is. And to your point, you can't change it. So acknowledging it for what it is, but then saying, okay, how am I going to allow that to continue to impact me today? And what decisions do I need to make differently to continue to move forward?
And there's actually a lot of research around, I hate using the word traumatic things, but let's say really significant things that talk therapy doesn't even always work. You need somatic therapy, moving through the body, or you need EMDR, or you need some kind of other modality, because at some point, I think most people experience that. You get to a point where you're like, okay, I've talked about it, but like, then what? Like, what's the next step? So sometimes it's healing through where you hold the emotions in your body, through that somatic movement, or through EFT or tapping or shaking and all these different modalities, exercise even, or moving it into a coaching capacity. And I really like to walk that line with clients if I know something is pretty significant. I did this with another client who had a pretty traumatic birth experience with her daughter. And I'll say, can I ask you a question? And she'll say yes or no. And I'll say, have you dealt with this piece of it that might be important today? And she'll say yes or no. It's all very permission-based, and just the awareness of, is it affecting you today? Is it not? Have you thought about it? And therapy has its place. This client specifically, the first one, he went to grief therapy. They all did. In the immediate aftermath of that event, they went to grief therapy, and it was all very helpful at the time. But it's not always helpful, to your point, in certain instances in life.
And I really like that you talked about, like, there's so many different modalities that can be used in therapy as well, or even in grief therapy directly after an event occurs can be very helpful. So can I ask, do you coach this way because you have also had experience in needing to box past situations up and moving forward and away from them? Is that from a personal experience for you?
You know, no one has ever asked me that, but probably. I would think that that's probably true, that I have experienced several things in life that I have been able to say, this lives here and I'm going to keep going. And honestly, things have probably followed me that I can now look and be like, okay, I see that connection now. But at the time, I was really able to do that. And also just this background of having that education as a therapist and understanding the purpose of therapy and how you are going to go back with some people in that way. And so understanding that there is significance in that, but it's not always just go as deep as we possibly can. It's like, can we pull the themes from it? Can we understand why you might act a certain way instead of talking about the thing so specifically, or just how does it move forward? But you're probably right. I'm sure some of that I taught myself by my own personal experiences.
I feel like in some ways, when you become a coach, if you are reflective about the way or the why behind your coaching, sometimes those little tidbits can come up for you of like, oh, yeah, this would be why I'm doing it this way, or this would be why I said it this way, or this is why I'm approaching this situation this particular way.
But I will say, and I'd love to clarify here, because there's so many coaches out in the world that are not coaches, that think that they can coach because they've experienced something. So they're like, I'll just be a coach. Especially in life coaching, if you're talking about dealing with the whole person. If we're talking business or we're talking something more specific, but if you're like, I'm a life coach, but you have no experience, but maybe you lost some weight. So you're like, I can be a coach, or I've experienced this one thing. It's important to vet these people who are coaches, because coach training is really not about your experience at all. It's about hearing the person and understanding the person and asking the right questions. And every now and again, I'll say, can I share an experience that I had that might help you, right? But if you're centering your own experience to guide this other person, like, that is not correct. It's guiding them with your coach's training and then interjecting some things that they might feel are applicable, that they would resonate with. But
such an important clarification, because yes, we're all human. So you're going to look through your own lens to some level. But
Yes.
when you are working with other people, it always has to be their start point and their end point and the right things for them along the way to get them from that point A to point B.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about how much does that nutrition and physical fitness aspect come into your life coaching nowadays? Do you still feel like it's equal? Have you very much gone one direction versus the other? Or again, in treating the whole person, is that just part of what's going to come in no matter what?
So the way that I have always done personal training is I'm essentially life coaching while we're personal training. We're always having conversations. And as I became a better coach and just became better at what I was doing, my coaching sessions or my personal training sessions while people are exercising are almost always coaching in nature too. So it's sort of like a 2-for-1. Right before COVID, I had started piloting this program that every time I talk about this, I should really try that again, where you would work out for 30 minutes. And then 30 minutes, we would do life coaching, because moving your body first truly just opens your mind and people just start talking. I mean, it's like actual magic. You're moving your body. I'm asking you questions as like a lead into coaching. And then by the time we're done with the workout portion for 30 minutes, and we would sit on the floor and you could stretch, but we were doing life coaching, or you could sit. So a lot of times I think the block people have is that therapy or coaching feels very formal. Like I have to be sitting in a chair and staring at a person. And that feels not great for a lot of people. So now that I'm talking about that, I'm like, we should do that again. But the personal training was always weaved in with life coaching. And then I branched off and started having people who wanted to do just life coaching, which is cool. I like that too. And the way I talk about it now is you have an entry point. Again, you're a whole person. And so you're going to come to me via exercise, personal training, maybe. And then I'm going to say, hey, also, we could do specific life coaching if there's more you want to dive into. Or you're going to come to me because of life coaching, because you want to talk about a job or relationships or your health, but you don't want to do personal training, but you want to talk about prioritizing your health, create a plan. And so these entry points bring you in, and then we work together to really figure out like what's the best plan for you.
So really, somebody could have all of it if they wanted to.
Yeah. Like I had a personal training client once who he's like, I think I need to do therapy again. And I said, okay, cool. I can help you with that if you want, find a therapist. And then he was like, but I don't know if therapy is it. And this was when I was pretty early in coaching. And I said, well, do you want to try doing coaching with me? Or is that a weird cross of things? Do you want to keep that part separate? I mean, it's separate from your training, but I can do both. And we ended up doing that where we would meet separately for life coaching and separately for personal training. And it's very cool to do both with the same person, you know, very focused life coaching, and then also have them do personal training. But I also have people who work out at a different gym, or they're even seeing a therapist and they do coaching. So it really is what you need at the time and how that will work with you, and then making that fit the whole picture. And I want to say one other thing about movement. I used to be really shy about saying, I think everyone has to exercise, like putting an absolute on something, or you have to move your body. I'm like, well, you know, it's very important. You just have to do it. It just has to happen. Okay. I've gotten older and I've just decided I'm going to say what I really think, which is you have to move your body. How you're going to do that is up to you, but it is critical. And I used to beat around the bush and not want to say you have to do something, but the impact I see of people who are incorporating some kind of movement, I'm talking a 5-minute walk, anything. One of my clients, he does not exercise. He walks. This is a life coaching client. And then he started driving go-karts, like for fun. He's like, it's such a great workout. It's so fun. I'm moving my body. And I'm like, well, yes, kind of. But also, yes, you're moving your body. You are away from your house. You are interacting with other people, and you're physically doing something. Like, would I call that exercise? Maybe not, but you're using your body. And he's like, I feel so much better. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, I've been trying to get you to do something for a long time. So this is a win, right? Move your body somehow, even if it's go-karts.
Yeah, I mean, you need to include that in your list of walking, running, jogging, tennis, go-karting.
I mean, truly. I mean, last time I did it, I laughed more than anything. So laughter is also so therapeutic.
And to your point, he's out. It's fresh air, away from the house. It has the components. Oh my gosh. Tell me about how you put into practice in your own life what it is that you teach others to do. What are your favorite movements? What are your favorite mental health things to do to keep yourself sane and balancing all these things that you have going right now?
Okay, I don't know what age you are, but I just turned 40.
Okay, I'm 41.
All right, so you understand. So my entire 20s and 30s, I honestly was like, I got this. I'm in great shape. I move my body a lot. I'm going to outsmart everything. Like all of my clients tell me that things are going to happen that I can't control in my body. And I was like, no, I got this. Pretty cocky. I'm a trainer. I know science. I mean, I'm not perfect by any means. And I've never had a trainer body, but I run races. I do all these things, right? I turned 38 and my body was, no, ma'am. Nope. No. And so I have become the most next level coach version of myself after life just gave me life. I now really do understand what you meant when you said, I just have gained 5 pounds and I don't know where they came from, or my body hurts now, or I need more recovery, or my joints are crapping out. I mean, I've had 2 knee surgeries in 2 years because my joints were like, we're done. So I get it now. So I have to say, I was a great coach before because, again, coaching isn't about me. So I will always hear you and I will always work with you and understand your life. I'm never going to say to you, no, if you just worked harder, that wouldn't be true. That's not how I was coaching. But for my own life, in the back of my head, I was like, I got this. Fitness is linear. It's just going to keep going up. So silly. It's not. But all that to say, I've probably in the last few years gained 20 pounds, had 2 knee surgeries. The stress of life has really affected me. I mean, all these things that really do happen. And it has knocked me down so many pegs that I've had to just rebuild and truly identify, how do I feel about my body when it has 20 more pounds on it? How am I going to move it now that I am more limited in what I can do? And how am I going to listen to my body? And how am I going to detach from what I thought I'd be doing right now? And just, it's been a lot.
I am nodding my head and chuckling over here because it was the exact same way for me, almost to a T. I mean, yeah, I got to 37-ish, somewhere in there. And that was kind of where I started seeing those first glimpses. And then I had my daughter when I was 38. And obviously pregnancy complicates a lot of things and changes your body in very dramatic ways. But even beyond that, it was the exact same thing that you were talking about, the 20, 25 pound weight gain, not really understanding what it's coming from. I'm eating very similar to what I did. I'm moving very similar to what I did. I don't understand. And it really is this, at least for me, it was this moment of, I just kind of don't really feel like I'm in my own body. This isn't somebody that I understand. It doesn't, nothing makes sense to me.
Yes.
But then also a little intimidated by, so now what? Because what if somebody can't give me a solution? What if I don't go back to feeling comfortable? And you don't almost want to hear that from somebody. At least for me, I just became, until January of this year, complacent about it. Well, I guess this is the way that it is. And I just have to start accepting it and trying to identify, I guess, with this different body that hasn't been me in the past.
Yep. And the best thing that has helped me, it took me a long time. I'm talking years of, denial is maybe the right word. Complacent, denial. This can't be what's really happening. I'm going to wake up tomorrow and I'll just be magically back in this other body. And it just wasn't ever true. And several things I had to do related to being honest with myself. This was the hardest part. I'm like, you don't have great genetics. You literally outran them for 20 years of your adult life. You outran your genetics. That doesn't last forever for me. I have bad joint genetics, truly. I have obesity genetics. I have addiction genetics. They're all there. And I thought I could outrun them by being really ahead of it, but I can't. And so I was honest about that. Guess what? Your body is a slower burning body and you are not exercising and training like you were 10 years ago. You're 10 years older and your activity level is significantly less. When I think about what I was doing to train for that stuff 10 years ago, I am not expending even 50% of those calories like I was back then. I am a lot more sedentary. I sit more for my work, my life. Like, I have to be really honest that movement has to be intentional. And so I spend a lot of time denying these truths. I love food. I love to be full. I love to eat. All these things are true. I have a sweet tooth. All these things are true. Once I could sort of accept that they were all true, like actually accept them, which took a long time, then I could start to work on them, which is okay. You have to be more purposeful with movement. You're going to have to go for small walks during the day. You're going to have to pay attention to what you're eating. And if you choose not to, you'll probably gain weight. Like, these are the options. You have to change what you're doing for your exercise because your body cannot do what it did. It just can't. So how are you going to change your mindset and enjoy something that you love? And I'll tell you this because I was actually just talking to our friend Amy yesterday. I left the gym and I left her a message and I was like, God, I love the gym. It's so great. And then I said, but I still really miss what I used to do. But like, I just left the gym and I lifted really good and I did a hike on the treadmill, which 10 years ago self would have been like, well, that was a stupid workout. That's all you did? And I still have part of me that really longs to be that person that could just crush for hours. I can't. And in the moment, I'm like, I love the gym. I feel so good, but I also miss it. And both of those things are okay at the same time.
Yeah. And I think too, I was just talking with girlfriends about this as well, is you can grieve the loss of who you used to be in a lot of different capacities. For me, recently, it's been, I'm no longer a teacher. And what does that mean? And I'm not connected to that community. But the same thing is true for our bodies, right? And even who we are at any given age. And that we can grieve the loss of our early 30s, our mid 30s, our late 30s as we enter the true 40. But we need to continue to have an appreciation and genuine love for, yes, it isn't what it was before, but I can still do this. Like, I look at Amy on her Instagram stuff and she's doing these pull-ups and I'm like, holy moly, lady, that is a beautiful thing. And I am working my way toward the upper body strength to be able to do that. I couldn't do that when I was 20. I couldn't even do it when I was like in my early 30s. And I didn't have a baby when I was in my 20s or early 30s. I had a baby when I was in my late 30s. And so trying to shift my mindset and letting my body hear me say, I still appreciate you for what I can do, even though that looks different now.
And I really try to think about, if I knew I was going to end up here at 40, would I have still done what I did for the last 20 years? Like, would I change it? Because I definitely got here with a destroyed knee because I did a lot, which was awesome. Yeah. And that actually created the life I have now. Doing endurance racing, traveling, meeting new friends, training for all these things, running on rough terrain for miles and miles and miles, doing 24-hour race, all those things destroyed my knee. I mean, it did, straight up. But I loved it all and I wouldn't trade it. I mean, it gave me who I am. It gave me my friends. It gave me travel experiences. So therefore, if I wouldn't change it, I have to decide what the future looks like. And I also have many examples of people who did not care for their health in their later years. And I am not going to be that person. I will do everything I can to stay healthy and strong. And so I'm like, all right, that means we're going to get really strong in the gym. I'm still thinking about doing that S word that my surgeon said. Swimming. Okay. I looked at him and I was like, you do know I'm not even 40 and you just told me to go swimming?
No, the instant you said that, I was thinking of these ladies at this gym. They're like 80s. Like the second that you said that.
I looked at him and I was like, I'm not even 40. I mean, the funny thing is I love swimming, so this is not crazy. But also, I don't think you have to give things up. I'm not done running, but running looks very different. Can I run every day? No. Can I walk out my door and run 10 miles? Absolutely not. Nope. Cannot. Can I go out and run a 10K? Yes. Was it as fast as I was 5 years ago? Absolutely not. But can I also enjoy it? And the surgeon was like, I don't think you should run. And I was like, I think you're wrong. See you later. I guess I'll swim when I'm 43. But it's also just listening to your body. My body tells me don't run every day. I want to still run a little bit. But if I keep fighting it and like trying to run every day, that's also not going to work. Yeah. So it's that adaptation of what I want and what my body wants and actually listening and respecting it. And we got to meet in the middle here. It's really hard.
It's such a powerful thing to be able to find that balance between I'm going to push it and I'm going to be a determined person because I love this thing. But at the same time, I also recognize that if I continue to do damage now, I'm not going to be able to do any part of that at all.
Right.
Pretty quickly.
And I think we just don't want to know that we're aging. And I also think that at any age, you can do really amazing things. And so I tell myself, well, what if you did start swimming and you could compete as a master swimmer? That is a possibility. I could do that. Or I could swim recreationally. Maybe if I liked biking, I could do a long bike ride. There are other things that will satisfy that. But I will also say, this is fascinating. There's some research out there that shows, and I believe it's true, that we do endurance things as a coping mechanism. The pain, the time, the suffering, and I can guarantee you that I started marathon training early in my life to literally outrun some problems. At the time, did I think that that was true? No. But as I have been forced to really deal with some big things and actually talk about them, deal with them, coupled with the fact that I can't actually go do those miles like I used to, but the urge is less. And I think that is fascinating that a lot of times we do these hard, long things because we do process with our bodies. I mean, I just talked about that earlier. Sometimes you need a somatic practice, and a lot of times that can be movement, exercise, training to move the feelings through your body. And now that I've sort of dealt with some of them, I'm like, do I really need to go punish my body so hard?
That is fascinating. Wow. That's a big revelation.
If I was back in graduate school, I think I would study that for my final paper, but it's interesting.
I mean, maybe you're going to tell yourself you need to go back to grad school.
I love school. So that's a dangerous thing to say to me. If I could just be in school forever, I think I would just like keep learning things.
I mean, the teacher in me loves that. And I always consider myself a big proponent of lifelong learning, that we're never done. It's never too late to learn the thing that you're interested in. But yeah, that is a very big revelation. And to your point, with endurance, it gives you a length of time to continue to process that thing versus a 30-minute jog. That might be time to burn off a little bit of steam, but there is something that happens when you're doing those endurance things where it's like you get out of that initial phase and you do get into this very out-of-body experience where you're able to really work through things that have nothing to do with the movement per se, but the movement's allowing you the time and the space to deal with the thing.
And you might not even be consciously dealing with it. That's what's so wild to me, right? But just the movement of your body for so long process things in your body.
Well, they didn't get a chance to get into it, but what have you done as an endurance runner? I would love to hear more about that because I'm headed into a marathon in September.
Which one?
I do the Superior. Yes, the Superior Marathon, which also has a 50 and 100 miler up on the North Shore.
I do know this.
Have you done it?
No, but the fact that you say speed hike, I am a fast walker. And now that I can't run, I'm like, tell me more about this.
Wait, so it's a good one to do because there's 100 milers that are doing it at the same time. You're given a bigger window in which you can start and end compared to like a road race where they're having to block traffic and things like that. So I speed hike it. I pick my pace and I'm literally up there on the trail with loads of people running, doing the 50 miler, doing the 100 miler. I have a girlfriend who has done the 100 miler several times, and it's a beautiful trail and it's this amazing community. You have 4 aid stations, and I just speed hike it, and I'm on my 3rd this year. So I've done it twice, completed it twice, and then I have it coming up here in September.
Okay, so give me a time frame because now my wheels are turning.
My first year took me 9 hours to complete speed hiking it.
I mean, that's still like, what, 3-ish miles an hour, which is still a lot when you're hiking with a lot of elevation.
Yes, with a lot of elevation.
I love this. Do you use poles?
Yes, I use poles. And then I have different sources of fueling that are just in my backpack along with my water. And I do electrolyte tablets and salt tablets and things like that in water. And I'm fueling or eating enough calories usually every 45 to 50 minutes as I'm moving. And it's a lottery. So you sign up for it in January, and then as long as you get selected, then you can compete in it in September. And it's just the coolest experience. Yeah, you got to put it on your radar because like I said, I am not a runner. If I'm going to get into my Zen state and process things, it's always through a walk. And I love hiking. And when I paced my friend who did the 100 miler several times, I thought, I think I could walk this. I think I could hike the marathon and not run the marathon. And then I did. And then I finished it twice. And so now I'm going on my third.
Okay, this is so exciting. You have just opened my eyeballs because I know people who do the Superior and they run. And the secret about ultras, especially trail ultras, is a lot of people walk a lot of it. They hike a
Correct.
lot of it, which people don't really know. They're not running the whole time. They're doing a lot of hiking.
It opens the door. I just did a 10 mile and it was the same thing. I just speed hiked it. My body in general does not like running. It just does bad things for me when I break into a run. And so for me, I can walk anything and speed hike anything. And it's completely opened the doors for me of what I'm able to do from a speed hike perspective. And I really, really love it. So that might be an avenue for you before you consider me.
Before I become a swimmer, that's right. Very good. Very good. Yes.
Yeah. So, okay, Lindsey, since I know we're tight on time here, where can people find you? Where is the best place to go if they're wanting to reach out to you virtually to connect either with the life coaching or the training aspect?
Yeah, there's a couple of ways. Instagram is Lindsey Heiserman Coaching. So you can find me there. You can just go to my website, which is just my name. And then what we didn't talk about a lot is I do corporate speaking and teaching about stress and boundary setting, mental and emotional health, but in the workplace. So that's another avenue that I try to reach people at. So if you are at a business and you're like, I would love that kind of education to be brought into my place of work, also contact me because I'd love to have a conversation about that.
Cool. I love it. Well, I'll link all of your things in the show notes. And thanks so much for being on the podcast today.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for wandering with me today. If you were inspired by this episode and think it would ignite a spark in a friend, don't hesitate to share. And if you're craving more from the Wander Mode community, hop on over to Instagram at WanderModeCo. Meet you in the next episode, and until then, wander on.